Howdy. Howdy. Yes. Welcome. Thank you for sticking around. I hope to make this exciting and entertaining. And if you guys have feedback and we want to chat in the middle of it, let's go ahead and do that as well, because I want this to be interactive for you guys. I was going to talk about my history in CrossFit, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But even before that, I've been in fitness my whole life. I grew up in this building, but in the original building over at Reed, underneath the stadium, the dungeons. There was a child movement laboratory that was probably the first CrossFit gym. It had rings and ropes and balls and weights and everything you could imagine. And that's where I grew up. My mom is faculty here. My dad worked here for 30 years. So I grew up at this university in this program, which is pretty awesome. And it's even cooler to see all the new setup that they got here. All the dusty old rusty weights are gone and all shiny new stuff now. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about CrossFit. What do y'all think? My name is Lowy. I am the owner of Black Box Strength and Conditioning. We have a gym here in Fort Worth that started out as CrossFit ATM. So it was originally a dedicated CrossFit gym. We now have a weightlifting program, some private training, and our CrossFit program is still alive down here. In Fort Worth, we're not a CrossFit affiliate, but we do the same thing. We've got a strength and conditioning program, which is, we'll get into this, but more of a CrossFit 2.0 type program. We've got a weightlifting program that's growing, and then some private training as well. About me. So owner started CrossFit ATM in 2006. In 2006, CrossFit wasn't cool. People didn't know what it was. People didn't care about it. All of my clients that I had, especially in those first couple years, didn't care. They just wanted to get results. And that's what we did. We gave it to them. It was a very, very big learning process for me and the people that I worked with. But it most certainly wasn't perfect, and it wasn't what we do as CrossFit now. I started doing CrossFit probably 2005, so we're sneaking up on 10 years. I don't currently do CrossFit. I'm currently a competitive weightlifter. I snatch and clean and jerk for as much weight as I can do. I started that in 2008. That's the American Open. 2013, I finished second, the best finish I've had since becoming a weightlifter. We'll see how Nationals goes this year. Feeling really good. I've been a high-level athlete my entire life, actually multi-sport athlete, which is good, according to Kyle. Played soccer, baseball, handball. My dad was a handball coach here at A&M. I ended up playing ultimately for him when I got back here into college, but I also played a couple years of soccer in college. That was kind of the beginning of my endeavors into fitness. I'm naturally competitive weightlifter, and I'm also a husband and father. This awesome photo right here is me, my son, my wife, and our future unborn child who's due in August. Should be fun, baby girl. So I wanted to talk about why I'd be qualified to talk about CrossFit and why you guys should maybe listen to what I have to say about it. I have CrossFit Level 1 and Level 2 certifications. I've taught on the Level 1 staff. I've taught on the Level 2 staff. I don't even know if they do the Level 2s anymore. But I've been certified officially Level 2. I've coached on the CrossFit weightlifting staff with Coach Bergner, and have actually put on my own seminar related to and focused on CrossFit performance and how to make that better. So called it a performance development seminar. And basically it touched on the things that weren't involved with a Level 1 CrossFit seminar. Having been involved in that pretty intimately, I knew what people were missing and I knew all the questions people were asking. So I presented it to CrossFit. They said, no, we don't want to do it, but go ahead and do it on your own. So I did. Ultimately, I got booted because of that, but that's neither here nor there. I own the 61st CrossFit affiliate of 5,000 plus, so there's over 5,000 more across the world. We were number 61. I think we were number 3 in Texas. So we've been around for quite a while when it comes to the CrossFit life cycle. I was a 2-time games competitor. That's CrossFit Games. That's not Olympic Games. In 2008, I finished 7th. And in 2009, I won the regionals and competed at the games. However, I'd already quit by then, I guess. Regionals was like the last kind of fire I had going there. And then I just, basically by the time we got to the games, I decided I wanted to be a weightlifter. And so I didn't train or care much about CrossFit. And you guys know as athletes how that goes. Burnout in CrossFit is super duper high, and turnovers happens really quick. I also currently coach some high-level CrossFit competitors, as well as Olympic weightlifting competitors, which actually go hand in hand. I've got a quote in here later on from a good friend of mine that kind of relates to that. Candice Ruiz is one of the top CrossFitters in our region. Chelsea Lewis is also in the top 15, 20 in our region. Candice just finished 5th at regionals. Last year she finished 4th, just missed it 2 years in a row. Previous to that, she had gone to the games a couple times. So if you guys don't know, the CrossFit Games is like the ultimate show for a CrossFitter. It's like the Olympics, except that it happens every year. So it's not quite as exclusive. However, it is very, very hard to get to, and it increases in difficulty, and it increases in its breadth, and the amount of athletes and their quality keeps getting better and better. So very, very hard to make it these days. But like I said, I've got experience coaching people that have made it and have competed in that level. Mona Pretorius, she's a weightlifter in South Africa. I met her in 2011 when she thought she wanted to be a CrossFitter, when she had a real good shot at going to the Olympics in 2012. She's a super duper high level Olympic style weightlifter in her country and internationally. She actually just recently snatched 88 kilos and clean and jerked 108 kilos as a 63 kilo lifter. You guys pull out your phones and do the math there, and it'll make you feel really good about yourself. I've worked very closely with CrossFit Invictus. They are a super duper high level gym and team, and there's some individuals that come out of that team as well. John Mariotti is one of those guys that comes out. He's a master's level athlete, trains at my gym. He's 58 or 59, and he's qualified for the games this year. So really interesting to work with those guys. The majority of today's talks have been about preparing people for things that we know about. And the challenge with CrossFit is that we don't know what we're preparing for, okay? So coming up with a periodized, planned out training program for something that we don't know about is virtually impossible, right? So we have to pick and choose kind of what was talked about earlier. We have to have our own philosophy on what we think is important when it comes to the sport. And I have mine. Won't go too far into that today. However, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish before you can actually develop a plan for it. My current pursuits, Black Box, we kind of call that a CrossFit 2.0. We use some intelligence in our programming. We have a dedicated strength program, which a lot of CrossFit programs do not. We use some movements that aren't necessarily always considered CrossFit. We do some bilateral stuff and core stability training and all that fun stuff. Weightlifting, coaching, and competing. I also have a competitive CrossFit program. We've implemented that both in gyms and teams and for individuals. And that's really fun to do. Everybody that I've met in the CrossFit community is really motivated, wants to be better, wants to progress. And that makes them really fun to work with. Okay, so in order to have an intelligent conversation, we need to know what CrossFit is. Let me see a show of hands of those of you that work out in, own, train at, have been involved in CrossFit or CrossFit affiliates. Show of hands. Okay, anybody do CrossFit on their own outside of an affiliate setting? Okay. Those of you that have never done CrossFit, anybody? Okay, good. It's definitely something you should experience. Whether you want to continue to do it after that first experience is going to be up to you. I chose to take what CrossFit HQ headquarters, what their governing body basically defines CrossFit as. Okay, and that's going to be my definition of it. Their theory is sound. I really love how they describe what they do and what they talk about. Their practice of it doesn't necessarily fit into what I believe their theory says. So we'll get into that a little bit. CrossFit HQ says constantly varied functional movement at high intensity. We want to increase work capacity across broad time and modal domains. CrossFit is for everybody through scaling. So we don't change the exercise, we don't change the intensity, we change the level of movement. So if we need to change range of motion, if we need to change loading, we can do that. But for the most part, everybody can do CrossFit, and that's their theory on it. I've run across people that can't or shouldn't. We'll talk about that here in a second. They haven't done a great job of showing you that CrossFit is not the games, okay? The games competitors and the people that are competitive in CrossFit should be on a different level. That's kind of like putting Little League baseball players in the setting where they would train as Major League Baseball players, okay? And that's where a big mistake has been made in local affiliates all the way, across the world. And that's really hard to watch because a lot of people, 99% of people, I don't know if I put that, it's on one of these, 99% of people that do CrossFit should not be competitive. They should not be training to be competitive, and they shouldn't care about that. And I think that's one of the downfalls of what they've created. Anyway, so another part of CrossFit, everyone is training for competition. I don't know that that's the best thing. I think competition is good sometimes. I don't think it's good all the time, okay? Some things that are good about CrossFit, we get motivation, we get performance goals, and we get accountability, right? So the community is really, really fantastic. I'm gonna go deeper into this stuff here shortly. Some bad stuff is that it becomes a lifestyle. High intensity, is that healthy? Is that something that promotes health and makes people live a happier, healthier life? I don't know. We tend to get injuries from overuse or traumatic injuries based on doing things that aren't quite as intelligent, right? Whether that's loaded or unloaded. Have you guys seen the recent CrossFit fail video that's out? I watched that probably 2 days ago and I couldn't stop laughing. The amount of stupidity in there is just insane. There's no off season, so we ask people in our affiliates or at our gyms to train to compete every day, and we do that all year round. And that definitely is not something that's sustainable. And then we have no training plan. It's constantly varied by their definition, says we don't have a plan. And in my opinion, after doing CrossFit for 4+ years, coaching it for almost 10, that's silly, right? We have to know what we're trying to accomplish. And if we don't know that, then we're never going to accomplish it, right? So the 3 things that make up any general CrossFit workout, we have metabolic conditioning exercises, which would be considered unloaded, more like aerobic, cardio type stuff. Run, row, bike, swim, jump rope, airdyne, all that fun stuff would be considered some sort of aerobic activity. We put that into a workout associated with other things, and that's going to give us a workout of the day. They also incorporate gymnastics, which is body weight exercises. Relative to gymnasts and high-level gymnasts, the movements they use are very, very elementary, okay? I sat in on a talk at Paleo FX with Chris Summers, who's been a USA gymnastics coach, national team coach for years. And he showed some videos of his athletes, and it is just mind-blowing. And he showed what they were doing, and he said this is part of their warm-up. They do this every day. And the thought of what they were doing versus what I'm able to do, and I have a decent skill set when it comes to gymnastics, was mind-blowing. And the amount of time that it would take me to develop those skills was absolutely insane. So to use the word gymnastics in that context is a fail, okay? To use it in the context of body weight exercises, that's what they're talking about, okay? So push-ups, pull-ups, dips, even muscle-ups, that kind of stuff. Weightlifting is my love, but it is increasing in popularity recently, and you can see that if you walk into my gym. You'll see 25, 30 people weightlifting, and you'll see 5 or 6 people doing conditioning, okay? And to me, that makes me really happy. It may be the culture that we've created, and that, we have a little bit of a niche up there, but when it comes to competitive CrossFitters and CrossFitters in general, they know that in order to be good at their sport or good at CrossFit, they have to get better at weightlifting. And when I say weightlifting, I say snatch and clean and jerk, okay? And then the accessory stuff that supports that, such as pulling, pressing, squatting, okay? So it's increasing importance and relevance to the sport. And then this is the hierarchy of what is CrossFit. And they've done a really good job of creating this pyramid to show what's important and in what order. And I think this is something, part of their foundational stuff that is really, really relevant in any of the sports that you are coaching in. Okay, so if you're not coaching CrossFit, this is very, very important for you to take away when it comes to looking at how to train people, okay? Nutrition is the foundation. Food makes up what you are. It's your skin, it's your bone, it's your nails, it's your eyes, okay? If your nutrition isn't sound, your training could be top of the line, state of the art, and it's not gonna matter, okay? Metabolic conditioning, basically an aerobic base. If we don't have an aerobic base, we're not gonna be able to train as much as we need to, okay? So when we look at metabolic conditioning, to me, that doesn't mean high intensity exercise done till your heart wants to explode. That means creating an aerobic base to where we can train harder, right? So as a weightlifter, I do, 1 to 6 repetitions. Takes anywhere from, 2 seconds to 30 seconds. But I still need an aerobic base that's gonna help me recover intraset, and between days, right? So lower resting heart rate, I can pump more blood throughout my muscles. I can get better recovery, nutrients to my muscles and my bones, and I can actually recover quicker if I have a better aerobic base, okay? Gymnastics, body awareness is a big component of that, especially in sport. Weightlifting and throwing, that's your explosive movements, that's your training. And then sport, whatever your sport is. And generally we'll get some good aerobic conditioning from that, enough so that it'll support the sport that you're trying to play. Now that CrossFit's a sport, it really throws this whole thing off, because now we have to be ready for anything. We don't know what we're training for, so it's hard for me to come to terms with that being a sport. So you can see from a coaching standpoint, creating somebody that's good at CrossFit is the hardest thing that you can do, right? A quick example of that is this past weekend was regionals, South Central regionals. There were, 7 workouts? 4 of them had a pretty high component of pulling, right? Pull-ups, muscle-ups, rope climbs. And as a rule, we don't do a super high amount of volume in any of the programs that I do, because I think strength is important. I think that joint integrity is important, and I think it's important to keep you from getting injured. And I think if we do a high amount of volume in training, we're more likely to get injured. So I failed in that Candace really struggled with the last round or the last couple reps of every pulling motion, and that set her back quite a bit. So that's my fault from a coaching standpoint, but I'm still not willing to put her under that increased risk of doing an extended amount of pulling when it comes to volume. So it's just kind of like, I don't have an answer for it, but I failed to provide her the ability to progress. So some things that we can use. I want to try to be as partial as I can when it gets to this stuff, because there's some really fantastic stuff that CrossFit offers, and it's bringing to the forefront, and some not quite so good stuff that we need to look to avoid. Something that we can use, functional movement. Their definition of functional movement is movements that carry over into the real world, certain activities or certain sports, right? So look at what your sport is or what your activity is, and we're going to train movements that look like that. Squatting, running, jumping, throwing, pulling, pressing, all that fun stuff. They elicit big hormonal response because we can move a big load long distance quickly. Did I put that up there? Yep, so we can move large loads long distance quickly. We can produce a lot of power with these movements. They're not short, isolated movements, right? We can move a big load long distance, and we can move it quickly, and that's going to create power. We can create strength and high quality movement patterns. Something that CrossFit has done, and I guess to go back to before CrossFit, I was actually in the strength and conditioning / training world for a couple years before I got into CrossFit, and that might be different than what a lot of you CrossFit folk experienced. But before I got into CrossFit, I hadn't been exposed to any of the weightlifting movements, hardly anything with a barbell. I think I might have done some curls or some presses with it. But I was very, very new to working with a barbell when I got into CrossFit. And what CrossFit did is expose me to those movements, teach me the importance of them, and allow me to learn them. And really what CrossFit has really done is created these people that are super duper geeky about movement. And if you ever want to create good movement in somebody, we have to know all the things about the movement, okay? So that can be a really good thing and a really bad thing, because we need to know technically how to create and how to do movements. But if we're too geeky and we worry too much about everything, then we get paralyzed, and there's paralysis by analysis. We can't do the movement, we can't teach it, because we're creating this confusion in our athletes. So I try to make it as simple as possible, but what it's done to movement, in my opinion, and what I've seen, has been really fantastic. Emphasis on quality, consistency, and intensity. So before we progress to the next one, we're going to have quality movement. We're going to have consistency in movement, and then we can have intensity in movement. And that's their theory, right? That's theoretical. Do we actually see that in practice? No, absolutely not. Okay, and you can see that on any video anywhere on the internet. You can walk into any CrossFit gym and you can see a lack of consistency, a lack of quality, but a very, very high level intensity. And that's a big fail on a lot of fronts. And that's generally how we hurt people, right? We increase intensity in a shitty movement pattern. Excuse my language. Wake up. Some other things that we can use, their definition of fitness has 10 general physical skills. This isn't a CrossFit specific idea. This came from Jim Crawley from Dynamax down in Austin. But these 10 general physical skills are something that they've really publicized and made a big point to emphasize and help people create. Cardiovascular endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, accuracy, and balance, okay? You can't find a sport where all of these won't be important, right? And in my experience and what I've played through sport, all of these are super duper important. You could argue that CrossFit doesn't create this in everything that they do, and because of the variance of the program, we won't get a good training effect by any of these, but the awareness is there, and they've kind of brought that to the forefront and talked to us about these general physical skills. We can use high intensity. We can measure high intensity, and that's something they've started doing quite a bit by using a stopwatch, right? It's very easy to measure intensity if we know what we're measuring. Intensity is measured as, according to CrossFit, time divided by work. So basically power output, right? What is the amount of power that you're producing in a workout, in a lift, in a singular movement? That's how we measure, okay? We have to be careful and use intensity when it's appropriate. I do not think that everybody needs intensity. And in fact, in our facility, and hopefully in your facilities and places that you work, you have the opportunity to sit down with each person that walks in and you chat with them about what their goals are, what their lifestyle's like, what their experience is with exercise, and what kind of programs they've experienced, right? Most of the people we see, we talk about how our program is prescribed, and it's not all about intensity. It's about nutrition, lifestyle, and then exercise, okay? We want you to be strong and healthy and live a good life. We don't care how hard you can throw a ball or how many push-ups you can do, although that does sometimes motivate people. So we gotta make sure that we use high intensity appropriately and that we don't use it all the time. I think I've got some stuff in here later about when not to use it. We have to know what our client or athlete's goals are, and we have to train them according to that. I think intensity is most appropriately applied with unloaded or very, very safe loading of exercises, right? So we don't need to bring in intensity and a clock and a high amount of reps when our loads are beyond our level of strength. Does that make sense? So we don't need to take 80% in the squat and do 30 reps with it, right? What's gonna happen, right? Back injury, neck injury, hip injury, whatever it is, we're gonna be injured some way, okay? Maybe not today, maybe the next time you exercise because you got, so sore or so tired or so out of whack that something's gonna fail at some point. So what we like to use for intensity is sleds. Any kind of body weight exercise in general is pretty good for that. Burpees are a great one, right? You guys familiar with burpees? Down, up, downs, same thing. Any kind of aerobic work, we use row sprints, running sprints, airdyne sprints. All that stuff is super safe for intensity. It's not loaded. We can go super hard. We can get our heart rate really high. We can put a lot of effort into it. If we need to use loads, we can. Things like kettlebell swings are a good one. Really, really light power cleans, depending on the workout that we're doing, could work, and depending on the athlete that we're working with. Understand that technique will deteriorate with intensity, and that's not okay, okay? That's something that CrossFit kind of preaches, I guess, that 80% efficiency is okay, and if you're working with heavy loads, that's not okay, right? We gotta have 90, 95, 100%. We're not gonna always be 100% efficient, and movement's not gonna be perfect, but if we're in a controlled environment where we don't have a lot of repetitions, then that's gonna be okay. So be very careful if you're in the CrossFit realm and you're prescribing things that have heavy weight and high repetitions. And for me, high repetitions is anything over 10 reps, okay? Without some sort of like controlled rest around it. Significant controlled rest, not 10 seconds, that doesn't count. Something that's kind of new when it comes to the fitness world is creating a community. And CrossFit does a really fantastic job of this. I think a lot of that has to do with people suffering together. They become closer and they're able to interact a little bit better, and they can all hang out and have like-minded conversations. But you'll see really, really cool communities and great people come out of CrossFit gyms, and I've seen that. I've seen it all over the country and all over the world. They welcome you with open arms if you are like-minded and doing the same things they are. If you don't and you have anything counter to what they're doing, then they're not really going to enjoy that. Family-like atmosphere. They use benchmarks and performance milestones, and they use assessments and competitions within their own communities to help grow the community. And we do that as well. I think that stuff is really fantastic. It also gives a common vocabulary that people can discuss across the world actually now, how their performance is. So something else that CrossFit has done that's really fantastic is create this performance-driven, goal-oriented program design, right? So every workout they do is measured, and we can see improvement if we repeat that workout over the course of 6 weeks, right? So we do a workout, call it whatever you want, 2K row, snatch for as much as you can, or even like Fran is kind of like the classic CrossFit workout. You can measure the performance in that based on your time, your number, your weight, whatever the metric is that you want to use. And that's really fantastic. And that's not something that we did in fitness before CrossFit really came out. There wasn't a set of standardized things that we could talk about that helped measure what our performance was when it came to physical conditioning. Outside of vertical jump, 40 time and 2 mile run, it was kind of stale. So this has pushed most people in CrossFit further than just training hard in the gym, which is a good and a bad thing, right? We talked about how intensity is not great all the time. People now want to come in and compete all the time. They always want to win, and that's not a great thing. Many gyms and coaches are starting to get the whole picture. So in CrossFit gyms now, you'll see, because they're so performance-driven, they get the additional pieces. They get that sleep is important. They get that nutrition is super important to their performance. They also understand that lifestyle and stress, and they have those conversations with their clients, and that's huge, right? Before I got into CrossFit, I didn't know how stress affected the body. Outside of physical activity, I didn't understand it. I still am not sure that I understand it completely. Having been through some more stressful situations in life, you can understand a little bit better, and you do that as you grow and you mature. However, helping people deal with stress instead of replacing a fitness program with additional stress is something that we've really seen some great value from at our place. And also what I've seen is this is pretty unique to the CrossFit world. It's starting to shift and drift a little bit into the fitness kind of strength and conditioning world. But it definitely started in the CrossFit world, and a lot of people that I have followed and talked to and known for quite some time have been talking about this for a long time now. And I would say that simple, the inclusion of sleep, lifestyle, nutrition into a training plan, and the thought that that's important to a training plan is probably the most important contribution to fitness and performance in the last 20 years, is the awareness of how do these external things impact what happens in the gym and what happens on the field. And I think that's super fantastic. Okay, what should we stay away from? This is the fun part. Constant variation is silly. The shorter people are in CrossFit, the more they think constant variation is correct and good. And that's fantastic, because any program for the first year or two is basically a strength program, right? If you're using functional movement, then we're looking at a strength program that will make you stronger for about a year, maybe 18 months if you kind of start from scratch. After that, people start to realize that their performance isn't getting any better. Their times aren't going down. They're not improving on anything. And they realize that if they get stronger, then their performance starts to improve, okay? And so at a year and a half, people go, oh, well, I need to get on a strength program, and then variation goes out the window, because they understand that if their squat goes up or their power clean goes up or their press goes up, then all of their metrics are going to start to improve. Okay, and we see that in any sport, in my opinion. I think if we see that we can improve power output, we can improve strength, then sport is going to get better, right? We'll be more explosive, we'll be less injured, and we'll be able to play longer. So when it comes to CrossFit, a sport of skill, we need constant exposure to skill in order to get better at skill. We can't think that we're going to be able to do so relative to us, a muscle up might be a high level skill. We can't think that we're going to be able to get a muscle up if we attempt muscle ups once a month, right? And according to their definition, that's what we should do, right? We get isolated exposures to many different movements over the course of time. That's going to end up being enough, and we're going to get better at it. What people are seeing, and the intelligent folks have known for a while, is that that's baloney, right? We have to have a frequent exposure to movements that are important to the sport. What would you think if a pitcher only pitched once a week? Right? It's the same thing in CrossFit. If you have something that's important to your sport, then you should do it a lot, right? Weightlifting is important, gymnastic skills are important, even kettlebell stuff is increasingly important. A good friend of mine, CJ Martin, he's actually the owner and head coach at CrossFit Invictus, one of the most successful CrossFit gyms in the world probably when it comes to performance. Quoted this for me. He said, "I'm a weightlifting coach that programs some capacity work." And that ties right into the constant variation, right? His athletes weightlift just about every day. They snatch, they clean and jerk, they front squat, back squat, press and pull. And then they maybe do some kind of capacity work, whether it's a traditional CrossFit type workout, whether it's an interval-based workout, or if it's some type of aerobic-based training. And you can see his programs if you go on CrossFitInvictus.com. You'll see exactly that. You'll see a lot of weightlifting, a little bit of capacity work, and a little bit of aerobic work. Even for those that have a general goal that's kind of non-specific, I think we still need a plan. We still need to know what's important to us as coaches, and we need to be able to apply that to our general population. And for us, we have a fitness philosophy at Black Box that goes something like this. Fitness is a journey. Our journey is supposed to allow us to accomplish things outside of the gym, okay? So our fitness philosophy centers on allowing you to perform outside of the gym, the things that you want to perform, while keeping you healthy and attentive to what we're doing in the gym. So that's our philosophy. It's not measurable. It's not something that we can test people on, but I don't care about that. What I care about is giving people the results they want, and their goals are not my goals, right? So what they want doesn't mean that I have to want that. So, or what I want doesn't mean they have to want that. So that's our definition of fitness, and that's how we prescribe it to our folks that are in the general fitness program. And then this is a little bit geeky, and you CrossFitters might understand this, but in a CrossFit workout, your variation should come from the amount of time spent doing a workout or the interval base that you're using. It should not come from using tons of different exercises and like all these different tools, right? It should come from different time domains and different efforts based on the amount of time that you work. So a good example of that would be if we were to take burpees, a safely loaded exercise that we can create a lot of intensity out of, and we were to do burpees for 10 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and 25 minutes, okay? Each one of those workouts would provide a very, very different stimulus and a very different workout based on the amount of time that you're working, okay? And that's what I mean when I say use a different time relative to your working as opposed to different exercises all the time, okay? And then that also goes into knowing what you're trying to elicit from people. So if you plan a workout that you think is going to take 8 minutes and it takes 30 minutes, you've missed the mark. You've failed at what you've tried to accomplish, which is creating an 8-minute workout, right? And over time, you start to learn what that looks like and how to create those workouts. But it's super important to know what you're trying to get out of the workout before you actually have people do it. What else should we stay away from? Volume, okay? Traditionally, CrossFit programs tend to be super duper high in volume. What does that mean? That means we're doing an excessive amount of repetitions in a certain movement, okay? Generally, high volume is gonna cause fatigue, cause for non-perfect movement patterns. It's gonna cause injury and overuse. And I know you've seen this in any sport that you've ever played or coached. It's the same in CrossFit. We just created in the gym, which as a strength coach is the worst thing that we could do, right? If we create overuse injuries in the gym, what do the coaches say when they get on the field? You're fired, right? I don't want him going to you anymore. You just hurt my best athlete. So be careful using this in super high volume with people that actually have other sports. In my opinion, it's the worst part of CrossFit, especially if it's loaded, right? So loaded, high volume movements, worst thing that could have happened in fitness, in my opinion. The risk does not come close to the reward that you get for that. And then exercise selection is crucial if you need volume. So there's some maybe select sports that volume would be really important in, and then CrossFit specific training, you'd really need to amp up the volume and use that as a training tool. But you gotta be careful about it, and it's gotta be balanced, okay? Something else we should stay away from, high intensity all the time. A couple reasons for that. First, technique obviously degrades under intensity, like we talked about loading. So we gotta be really careful about how we load high intensity workouts, right? They need to be body weight, they need to be easy to push hard and easy to fail at when you're fatigued without any injury consequences. It's not worth the injury for 99% of people doing CrossFit, and for that 1% that maybe should be doing the high volume, they're all CrossFit competitors and they understand the risk. So it's like, you know, twisting your ankle in a scrimmage kind of thing. So we just have to know what the risk is. It's definitely not worth it if you have athletes in other sports. Hurting somebody in the gym with something silly like high volume, high repetition power cleans is silly, just silly. High intensity all the time We talked about the lack of an off season in CrossFit. Will cause mental burnout, physical burnout. We can burn out the adrenals. It becomes a hormonal issue where people either have to do high intensity exercise in order to feel good, or they can't muster the courage or the energy to do high intensity exercise all the time. Once they get it done, they feel better. Okay, if that's you or somebody you know, then you probably have some issues with your adrenals. You should get that checked out by some kind of functional medicine practitioner. In general, we'll see a client life cycle in a CrossFit gym, 12 to 18 months, okay? They'll see some really fantastic results from about 0 to 9 months. They'll feel great, and then we'll keep pushing and we'll push harder because they think that if they do more, they'll feel better and even look better. And then by 12 months, they're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I can't muster the courage to do this. You see them less and less in the gym. By 18 months, they're like, I'm done. I'm either injured or I'm just so tired and fatigued and beat up that I can't do this anymore. My fitness philosophy comes from this idea of we have to do more, we have to do more, we have to do more. And how do we prevent that? We identify something outside of the gym that we want to accomplish, and then we help support in your goals in creating that. Because if we make you so sore from being in the gym that you can't do anything outside of the gym, what's the point of being there, right? And then it becomes something that is dose dependent and almost drug-like. So the intensity is something you have to feel good. And if that's you, or if you know somebody that's like that, there's an issue. And you need to step back, decrease intensity, and allow somebody to recover. Their hormones, their adrenals, everything are probably fried, and they need to be able to figure out how to live without that stuff, because it's not going to get better with doing more. Same thing, they need more for the same response, so kind of like the Kool-Aid. People have drank the Kool-Aid, they've got to do more and more and more and more in order to feel good. And then really intensity isn't for most people based on their lifestyle and situation. You have people that come into your gym that are just dragging, they're not sleeping, they got a new baby, they're stressed out from work. That's not a great opportunity to apply intensity to a program and to their lives, right? Do we need to create another stressed out situation for them to experience every day? Is that going to increase their quality of life? Absolutely not. We're going to put their body under huge amounts of stress in addition to the chronic stress they're already under? Absolutely not. That's silly. So make sure you know your clients and know what's going on outside of the gym as well. All right. This is me. Let's do questions.